It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. You're tuned into your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso, right here on SABC3, and it's time to head into the wild. And also, as we head into warmer months, more and more animals are going to come out of the woodworks, and we'll be definitely seeing more animals popping up around our homes and gardens. Now, birds, for example, thrive in warmer weather, and a few of them are quite fond of sharing our homes. And as beautiful as they are, they're not always the best house guests. And this morning, we've invited Colin Payne from the Bird Deterrence Specialist to chat to us about nesting birds and how to prevent them from moving in. Colin, lovely to have you with us this morning.
Thank you.
Cool topic, man. Nesting birds. I mean, I'm a big fan. I love birds.
Well, I think we all love birds. And one of the interesting things, of course, is that South Africa has probably got some of the greatest and most beautiful species of birds in the world. The problem is that there are a few of them, as you said, that are just create a bit of chaos for us. So I don't think we're here to talk about sunbirds and finches and robins and things like that, which we don't want to discourage, but rather those that make our life a little bit of a problem.
So let's talk about those ones that make our life a little bit of a problem. What are some of the most common ones that we do find around our homes and gardens?
I think, to a degree, it's sort of... There's one.
He's done a job on you, eh?
That is probably at this time of year one of the most irritating birds you can find, because the starling, the red-winged starling, you see the little, the red tip on its wings, that is notorious for invading people's ceilings. Okay. They can squash themselves through pretty much any little hole and set up home inside your ceiling, build a nest, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, the babies get hungry, so they scream, and people just can't bear it, because it lasts 2 or 3 weeks before they leave, and as I say, it's a huge problem this time of year. Between October and March, we probably do more house calls for that single reason than any other time of the year.
Okay,
and the pigeon, well, he's notorious. I mean, he was brought over in the 1800s by the British to carry messages.
Yes.
And now they just proliferate. You know, the thing is that a pigeon can be sexually active for a period of 20 years.
Really?
Yeah, you could come back as a pigeon in your next life. And in that time, they can have as many as 16 babies a year.
Wow.
So you just look at the numbers, and when you've got 2 on your building this year,
you're gonna
just do the maths down 5-6 years, and they're no longer pretty. You've got 2,000 of them, and they all come back to your building to nest.
Wow. What do we have here? Is this the other one?
It's a sparrow, house sparrow, Cape sparrow. Those are probably less of a problem to us, and certainly in Cape Town, tend to be restricted to the northern suburbs, the drier areas. We don't have an awful lot in the CBD or the southern suburbs. They also are masters at getting inside your ceiling, especially now. People are being very creative with their house building with Tuscan tiles, which are lovely curves for them to nip under. One of the worst things I've seen recently was at a quite expensive game farm where they've actually taken up residence inside the restaurant.
Oh, wow.
And they have a go at the buffet before the guests get there.
Okay, so those are some of the top 3 that can invade our space a little bit.
Yes, to a lesser extent in terms of individual homes, but certainly on the domestic front here, on blocks of flats and things like that, you've of course got the Hartlobe's gull, the seagull, which is also increasing in population.
Well, I'm going to stop you there, Colin. We are going to be talking about this a little bit more in detail, and also what some of the things that attract those birds to our homes and gardens. But if you have any wild-related calls around birds and nesting birds specifically, give us a call, 021-430-9881. Our lines are open. We'll look forward to chat to you.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
All right, we're back with Colin from the Bird Deterrence Specialist, talking about nesting birds. It's Into the Wild here on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. All right, Colin, so you ran us through a couple of, common house guests that we can expect. Here we have one, the red-winged starling as well. It's a beautiful bird still. Hey? Not in your opinion.
Well, no. At the end of the day, they're all beautiful, and they're all they're all creatures that need to have a life. Part of the problem with birds that have now invaded the urban environment is the fact that there are no natural predators. They live on roofs, you know. So there's nothing stopping the population growing, and it's just growing exponentially. And as a consequence, they're having to find more and more places to roost and nest. And roosting is probably as much of a problem as nesting, which is, you know, whether they just sit around sleeping or waiting until it's time to go and eat.
Yeah, exactly. But we would love to hear from you at home as well. 021 430 9881. Our lines are open if you have any questions. Maybe you have a bit of a problem with an unwanted house guest and how to get rid of them. Colin is here to answer all of your questions. All right, so Colin, let's talk about these things. What are some of the things that you have around your home that draws these kind of birds to come and make a little home for themselves?
Well, one of the classic things, of course, is actually feeding birds. And it is a little bit of a trade-off, because obviously we want to attract the right types of birds to our gardens. So I think one needs to be very specific about how you set up things to feed birds. Yeah. A lot of people just go out and scatter seed on the lawn, and you can see thousands of birds for hours on ends, particularly pigeons, will sit on the neighbouring roofs and wait until that person comes out, and they know. You can see them swarming around. And of course what happens there is you don't only attract them to your garden, your neighbours tend to suffer as well.
Exactly.
So, you know, and other attractive things are easy to get in roofs.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a roof structure that's either damaged or has particularly
So there's a
big
good
openings. Yeah,
example.
these tiles are typical. Not always do they have this board on the front.
Yeah.
It's just straight. And
There is an open
you actually
piece.
have an opening about that.
I've
big.
actually got an open piece like that in my house, and I've had some guests as well move in. I want to ask you this, because most oftentimes, and it happens quite often, that a bird makes its way into the house.
Yes.
And it comes across obviously very distressed. Not that
That's
bird.
one.
That's a pet. But what do you do in the event of how do you remove that bird safely without either you injuring yourself or get the birds injured as well?
Well, I suppose first thing you do is lock up your cat.
Okay.
'Cause that's
If you have a cat.
Nobody's getting out. There's no happy ending to that one.
Yeah.
And really, there's no specific way to do it. If it's in your house, what you've got to hope is open doors and windows, and eventually it's going to find its way out, because it finds its way in by accident.
Yeah.
And to be absolutely honest, the number of calls we get for people with birds inside the house are few and far between. If you look at this picture here with birds inside a shopping mall, it's a bit of a tough one. What they would probably have to do would be leave down some traps. And when I say traps, I don't mean traps that are going to injure the birds.
Yeah.
But over a period of time, they leave traces of food that gradually get them towards the tap, and then when they get in, they can't get back out again, and then you just transport the bird safely out of the out
So
of
there's
the
really
premises.
not much you can physically do
No. If it's in your house, just open the doors and hope, and obviously sort of try and
just usher them out nicely.
Usher them in the right direction. There are no secrets. You know.
Okay, well, we are still taking your calls, 021 430 9881. We'd love to hear from you. If you have a bit of an unwanted house guest, let us know. Colin is here to answer all of those questions.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. You're tuned into your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso, right here on SABC3. We're back with Colin as we head into the wild, talking about nesting birds. Colin, very, very interesting indeed. We're also going to be announcing the competition winner of our garden birds a little bit later on, so stick around for that. Right now, though, I want to ask you this. We've got a call on the line. Tanya, good morning, Tanya.
Hi.
Morning, Tanya. What's your comment or question?
I've had birds nesting in my house, but the problem is when they leave, they leave these wonderful little bugs called bird mites, which are impossible to get rid of. I don't know if perhaps you have because we've had to have Pesco spray about 3 times to get rid of them. If there's another alternative, should we remove the nest when there's still the eggs in there? Because that's when they tend to come once the fledglings and hatchlings have flown away.
Interesting.
Okay, to try and put that into context, what usually happens is the only time you would notice the mites is when the birds actually leave the nest. Yeah. Because typically the mites in the nest will feed off the babies and the adults. But what happens when they leave the nest is they leave a load of normally dormant lice behind.
Okay.
If we have a bit of unseasonably hot weather, then they wake up and they're hungry. So
Yeah.
what they do is they find their way down
Into
through,
the house, yeah.
usually between the cornice and they're tiny little things, and you can see sometimes little stripes of them walking down the wall, and they're looking for food. They're looking for someone to bite. But a properly applied pest control measure, a properly applied insecticide that has a good residual effect should deal with them, because when they hatch, then they'll still die. Removing the nesting materials while they're eggs, well, that's really a personal choice. You know, at the end of the day, there are hatching babies inside there, so you've just got to decide whether or not you
want to remove them or not.
You feel, you know, we're often faced with the same dilemma. People are driven crazy by the fact that these birds are making a racket in the ceiling and they can't get any sleep. But by the same token, if you move the nest, you can be as careful as you want and relocate it somewhere else. But the moment you touch that nest, the parents will abandon it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Very interesting. Now, that brings me to the question that I wanted to ask you earlier. Is there any concern for disease, you know, with nesting birds in the house that they can bring that could be harmful to you, the family, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
However, with what I'm about to say, I don't think everybody should just run off and shoot every bird they see. It's not that everybody will contract a disease, but there are a number of things in the droppings.
Okay.
There's histoplasmosis, which manifests as a lung disease. Ornithocosis, which also is a problem in terms of respiratory disease and can cause blindness. Salmonella is rife in pigeon droppings, which is why they're so much not wanted inside the space of companies that do food processing and things like that.
Of course.
Seagull droppings have candida.
Yeah, so there's a large
that's
number of
before you
things.
get to the ectoparasites, the mites and the mealworms and things like that they can leave behind as well. So there's a lot of stuff that is problematic that comes from the birds, yes, certainly.
Yeah. No, I can fully understand.
And typically that would affect people with depressed immune systems. So if you've got cancer sufferers or people who are perhaps HIV positive around, then contact with them is more of a problem than with a relatively more healthy individual.
All right, thank you, Colin. So, very interesting indeed. Our lines are still open. Call us 021-430-9881 and give us a question or comment. And Colin is here. He will be answering all of those questions. We'll have one more segment with Colin coming up.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
For the very last time this morning, we're jumping back into the wild with Colin. It's all about nesting birds and what you need to know about. Now, on Tuesday, we posted a competition on Facebook in association with Strike Nature. And all you needed to do was to send us your best questions for a chance to win a copy of Garden Birds South Africa or Southern Africa. And the winner is Kele Helga, who asked us, I always see some birds making nests in electrical poles next to globes and street lights as well. Why do they not get electric shocks? Or do they, Colin?
Well, typically they don't, because they're not grounded. If they were to put 1 foot on the pylon structure and 1 foot on the cable, then it would be a different story. But no, it's just one of those phenomena. You could hang by one hand unless you're grounded. But please,
let's not go there.
Do not do this at home.
Kele Helga, congratulations. That beautiful book, Garden Birds of Southern Africa, is yours. You can expect that soon. So nesting birds, just to finish it off, we've spoken in the break. It's very much a personal thing. I was mentioning that my grandfather had a big affection for swallows, specifically, who's also making nests on the roofs. I mean, but once again, you say that if you can manage it, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah, I think obviously things like swallows are migratory, and that's an interesting. That's you saw those Tuscan tiles. Sorry, just to interrupt. That's what's called a bird comb, which it's got flexible fingers, and you fasten it on the board, and it forms the same shape as the tile. But getting back to that, swallows, they're migratory birds. They're there for a little time. They're either in the nest or they're out looking for food or producing babies. So that's easily manageable. If you end up with a colony of 50 pigeons in your ceiling or sitting
Yeah,
on your
not so
gutter,
manageable.
and every day you go out and you've got to clean up this mess. Or perhaps you have a child, and that child crawls around and brings the droppings into the house. It becomes an issue.
So, I mean, you need to really put some thinking into, let's say, bird baths and bird feeders outside in the lawn. Is this something that you want to go down if you don't have the correct space for it, maybe?
Yeah, look, I think, as I said, right at the beginning, you want to do things, and you can research it, that will actually encourage the right type of birds, so put the right types of feed out. You might get a couple of the odd birds that you don't want, but the main thing is, if you don't want them to affect your living space, then protect your living space. Yeah. And if they're restricted to your garden, then that's really not a problem.
I want to ask you this: because obviously you work in bird deterring and helping companies that's got these problems. So what are some of the craziest call-outs, or one of the craziest call-outs that you had to deal with?
One of the craziest call-outs.
Thousands of birds in one place.
Well, I suppose one doesn't necessarily want to mention names, but I think I go back 10 years to be called into a food factory, which was an old building, and they have obviously a ceiling space, and we took out 50 bags of droppings and about 100 pigeons, and they'd been living up there for years. Now, of course, what happened was the little droppings were finding their way through the ceiling. So it was quite a risk in terms of food preparation area.
Wow.
But we're constantly climbing all over the place. So to say what's the craziest one.
You've seen it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Listen, before we let you go, we've got one more call on the line. Billy, good morning, Billy.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Billy.
Thank you, my brother. What's your question this morning?
Okay, my question is, I'm sitting in my mother's flat, and we've had this bird nest here that they've been building for over a year now. They just keep coming in every single day, every night, every morning, and they just keep filling up the nest. I don't know if they are actually going to be laying their eggs in the nest or not. It's actually very interesting, and we just don't understand what's going on. It's between the pelmet and the wall where the curtains are hanging.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I think if it's been going on for more than a year, have you identified what bird it is, Billy?
I have no idea. I don't know if they're finches or mossies. I have no idea.
Oh, is it a small brown bird or a...
They're small brown birds, and sometimes there's a coloured red and black bird.
Okay, well, the red and black bird will be the starling, and they typically come back every year and rebuild the nest. And
is that pretty much what you're looking at, Billy?
Okay, so we haven't even touched the nest. I told her we can't even take it down. I just leave it there because I find it very interesting.
Okay.
So best to do in this situation?
I think the thing is, if you wait, what I would do is if you wait until the nesting's over, obviously they're going to lay eggs and there'll be babies and then they'll leave. Then once that's happened, take the nesting material away and find some way of enclosing between the pelmet and the ceiling, and then they can't get back. You know.
Okay, we have no problem with them building in it, so I don't want to get rid of it.
Oh, okay.
We don't mind it at all.
Okay.
Well, then I think that's one of the things that Ewan was saying. You know, it's about how you deal with it, and some people find it interesting. If it doesn't become crazily disruptive to your life, then sit and watch it. It's all part of nature.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's what I would do, Billy. Thank you very much, man. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Really appreciate it, man. It's been rather interesting. Nesting birds. I mean, we love birds, man. We all do love birds. So make sure to catch us again next week as we head back into the wild on your Feel Good Breakfast Show.